All right, I will call to order a regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen on October 1st, 2018, in the lower level conference room of the Town Hall. We'll start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alright, so the next item is approval of minutes. So we have two sets. The first is our September 17th regular meeting. I will make a motion to accept, John's got, I think, some corrections, and I'll make a motion to accept with the corrections from Mr. Blessington, as well as on page 4, under the second tax refund motion, it should read $104.53, not $5,104.53.
Second?
All right, any discussion?
Matt, I also on page 3 under the town office building holiday party, reads selectmen were in agreement and it worked out well last year, so they were not objective. I thought we were pretty subjective about it. I think you meant to say there were no objection.
I did see that the first time, but I wasn't sure we didn't use those actual crazy words, so I know it is. And then
under old business, this is just a typo, nuisance ordinance, Todd Bissonette submitted handouts to the selectmen regarding state statutes and not statutes.
any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, if there's anyone present to speak?
Sorry,
You're gonna do that?
December 21st.
Oh, sorry. I sure am. The September 21st special meeting.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as read.
Second. Is there any discussion? So there was some wording we noticed that was incorrect in the warning, and I corrected that as we spoke, and Robin corrected it for the one we signed.
Yeah.
But for purposes of the minutes, because I did actually read it as it was written, she left that wording here, but the actual call then was corrected. So under item 1, you'll see it reads, on the recommendation of the Board of Finance will authorize the appropriation of appropriate. We corrected that, but because I read that into the minutes, Robin left that here, and it's noted down below. We did that, so. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Me, abstain. What am I supposed to say for the abstention?
You just say abstain.
Oh, abstain.
You actually
I
abstain.
don't know what I come up.
I'll make it easy for you. Don't be afraid. Okay. Now, is there anyone present to speak? Yes, sir, just identify yourself and your address for the record.
I am Todd Bissonette. I live at 41 Cosgrove Road. I would like to talk off the record. Is that possible? We can shut off the camera?
No, unfortunately, this is a public
Okay.
meeting.
All right, then we can go there. There's nothing on the agenda for the ordinance, which I don't know if it's going through. And that's all cool and that's fine. It's been a 3-year task as far as I'm concerned, and where the state police are involved, I don't really totally comprehend what they're doing or where they're at. They're here to protect and serve, with the exception of sitting up on I-84 between exit 70 and 63, 64 to ticket everybody they can to create revenue for, the state. I've spoke to several people, and without going to names, it's irrelevant. I can provide them if necessary. I did the WIllington thing. I did as a sign guy. I met with a lot of people, and the state police seem to not care about our town. I spoke with one individual where somebody was on her front porch, 2 o'clock in the morning, and the dispatcher sat there and said, maybe it's your neighbor. Are you okay? Don't worry about it. That's not what we're here for. is protect and serve. We're not sitting up on a highway going double time, collecting revenue or our paychecks at a construction site. We're sitting up on a highway, watching what's going on. I drove my girlfriend's car, which is, Robin was saying, she got a pistol permit. She is so squeaky clean. She doesn't drink, she doesn't swear, she does nothing. And I had a state trooper pull me over. Her car wasn't registered. And that was my mistake, her mistake. She transferred everything over. We're paying $1,200 to insure her car, and taxes are paid, and electronic glitch or whatever. I still got a $117 ticket. After I explained to the officer, he was polite, he was a gentleman. But where do we come into play? Is it all about making money for the state police, which is wrong. Okay, look back at the records. This isn't Mayberry RFD. Okay, work with the people and do what they're supposed to do. So getting back to what I'm saying, what is the state police doing? I have asked the committee before you, or the select people, where can we go? I don't want to put a burden upon taxpayers of Wellington. I understand where we're at. I understand the deficit. I understand the money. I understand what it cost. There's statutes in place, okay, that totally define what I am talking about. I handed it forward to Christina, the previous select woman before you, and it carried on into the board here. And all I'm trying to do is to keep my town where I retired, your town, safe, quiet, the quiet corner, as it's all over the internet.
So I will address the first thing, which is why it's not on the agenda. We don't have anything new to offer. We
Okay.
did say at the last meeting that we would invite them to come to a meeting so they could partake in the discussion so that we could move forward. They did not get back to us that this was a meeting to do that, so I felt the next step was to have them present at a discussion. If that was not going to be today, we didn't have anything to discuss on the issue. Therefore, it's not on the agenda. We are hoping they will be able to make it to our next meeting. Robin, since we spoke about it earlier this afternoon, have you heard back?
It's actually drafted on my
Okay.
desk at the top, I just
Okay,
haven't sent it.
so we're just, we've given them a series of dates to get back to us, and we left it, this board left it that we would have them come and discuss certain matters. There's nothing further for us to discuss until we can get some questions answered. As to your feeling that they're not doing anything for our town, I agree to disagree on that, and that's a matter of opinion. I do believe they care about our town. I do believe that they are doing things. I can't speak to the ticket that you received, their loss, and everybody who gets stopped without a registration has to pay whatever fine it is or go through the process. So that has nothing to do with whether or not they care about Wellington, in my opinion. So I definitely want to go on the record as saying I do not believe the state police do not care about our town.
Okay,
And so we hope for it to be on our October 15th agenda,
Okay.
if they will be here and to be able to answer some of the questions regarding the speeding concerns we've had, as well as the ordinance that we're discussing. And that's where this board left it at our last meeting, that we would have them come in here and help us work through some of those questions.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
I agree with
So,
you.
That's,
I don't have an issue with that, and along with agreeing to disagree, it's, the state police have a right and an obligation to defend our town. And in moving forward, there's several incidences, several different things. My personal situation may be obscure or whatever, but you have to look at the whole picture, is that when they come to our town, let's do what we're supposed to do. When the state police come to a woman that's by herself at 2 o'clock in the morning and refuse to come out and to look at what they're going through or what she's enduring, her safety, I have an issue with that.
so I
And-
would encourage you to take that up with the state police, but I think that's an individual situation, so I couldn't comfortably sit here and agree with you on that, so I think that's not a discussion for this board, that's a separate.
It's a state issue really, and, state police, or you might wanna take it up with your, state representative or your state senator.
Right.
They would be in a more of a position to help you than we would.
I understand that, John, and I agree with you. It's just like a situation I had, it was a couple months ago, and I've been working with Tina, who does an awesome job for Willington, our animal control officer. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I got woken up by 2 Belgian shepherds barking nonstop. After an hour, I called the state, this is an ongoing issue that's been running for a while. I called the state police, and they said, your animal control officer is supposed to handle that. I said, she is part-time, and she is off right now. Can you address it? I'm being woken up, my girlfriend has to go to work in the morning, she can't sleep. And they said, we'll dispatch a trooper. I went out and videotaped for an hour what was going on from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning. I then called at 3 o'clock and said, it's continuing. Is an officer coming by? And the state police told me that an officer did a drive-by, there was no noise, and it was quiet, so he didn't bother. I told him, I'm standing out here in a bathrobe with my flip-flops on. Nobody went by.
So.
It's time to end the BS stories. If we want our protection, we're paying for it. It's up to you guys to question the state police. Why aren't you working with us?
First of all, we do.
Okay.
That you are one instance. We might have others who come in and say they don't have a problem. I personally, if I've had to reach out to them before I was in this role, I've had no problem and no issue. So I can't speak again to your particular situations with the state police, but I do believe they do their best to
Okay.
protect us.
Erica, I record everything I do.
Todd, that's,
The state
again,
police and the dispatcher told me a trooper went by.
that's,
And I
again,
said, I'm sitting out here in the dark, nobody went by.
unfortunately, that's not something this board
Okay.
can mitigate for you. I wish that I could say we could, but we can't. So that's something I would encourage you to take beyond that. That is your particular experience with a situation with the state police department. So I'm gonna
What is
leave that.
relevant-
Unfortunately, that is not on the agenda, so I am gonna move the meeting.
This is my
Along.
this is my 5 minutes to speak.
Well,
I
we've been
disagree.
over 5 minutes. I can.
On and off, if we wanna split it up. I'm talking about, as a taxpayer, what I pay, what I do, and where we're going, the quiet corner. When we talk about asking the state police to come out and do something, and they do nothing, but yet we're talking about they're doing everything for
Okay, as
us.
far as your instance, Todd, we've asked them to come to a meeting and they haven't been able to coordinate a time with us. We gave them several options and this was just one of them. So they haven't not done something in this case, and we could go back and forth on this and agree to
Okay.
disagree. So,
If I may, and I'm
Yes.
sorry, but I call them all the time, and there's a residence on, a road, Cesar Road, and they want police. We can't force them, Todd.
but, and we
don't-
do
I
speak
know
with
we
them,
can't.
but as far as
Listen
this issue and taking care of the noise ordinance concerns you have, we gave them a list of several meetings, beginning with this meeting. This was the first of their options.
He said he'd get back.
And they will get back to us, and we are following up with them. It
I'm
was not
gonna
on
argue
tonight,
with you.
so, well, okay.
Yeah,
So is
John, I'm
there-
sorry.
Is there anyone else present to speak? Okay. Correspondence. You see a list of correspondence. The latest one that came in was, the one from Kerma. We put in, a claim for some of the issues I discussed around the mold in the basement. They are, going to, it's not as easy as, just accepting the claim. They want to investigate more. So it may or may not get, picked up, so that's where we are with that. I will, so that just came late this afternoon. So my status report, I will say that the books that were in that portion of the basement, the front portion of the basement that we knew had mold on them, were removed this morning. So they were taken by DRS, which is a branch of ERS, Digital Recovery Service, and I can't remember what the E is for. I think it's electronic,
That would make sense.
But they took the books, they shipped them off. They did tell us it would potentially be about 12 weeks.
She said early January.
January. Some of the books that were in there, we do not have to permanently retain. So they were assessor's books. So Rachel has gone through, and so she put in a retention, just paperwork to destroy them with the state. So we are moving them out of here and into another safe location where they're contained, but away from the building, where we have to keep them until the state says, yes, it's official, you can destroy them. So not all of the books that were down there do we have to clean. So the good news was it was a few less than we thought, so maybe it would cost us a little less. And so we'll continue to let you know how we go with that. Some of them will go back in our vault, they have to go in the vault, and some of them will go to the state library because of our lack of space. We have some things there already, and they can take some others. So they're willing to take some of those there. So the town clerk and the assessor and Robin have been working diligently on this effort. Let's see. The other item on the status is the front steps. The bricks and the steps, the railing, that's all, and the ramp are all being redone, pending a town meeting tomorrow night at 7 p.m. So if everything passes the town meeting, they will begin next week, I believe Tuesday, because Monday's a holiday.
We're gonna start
Potentially Monday, right?
Yeah, Monday to do the ramp.
Okay, they'll start, the first 2 days we'll be putting in a temporary ramp. So the side windows outside of my office will look like a nice traffic pattern. So you'll go in the side and the side entrance to the big common room will be the main entrance for hopefully 2 weeks, potentially 2 months. But let's all cross our fingers, it's only 2 weeks. All right, Public Works. I will mention that since we last met, maybe? No.
Last meeting was his first
Last
day
meeting was
back.
his first day back, so Derek is still back. I don't need to tell you he's back. They've been busy mowing the old landfill, sweeping chip seal stone on Crosgrove Road and here, roadside mowing, grading various gravel roads due to the heavy rain and adding some aggregate, sweep the chip seal route, repair the sweeper, clean the basements at the old town hall, mow the senior housing septic leach field and detention pond, and some vehicle and equipment repair. I know to some, the roadside mowing seems to be going at a slow rate. The rain does not help at all, so they are still moving along with that. All right, the first item of new business is a discussion about building fees. So you should have in your packet some information regarding building fees. Robin, is the letter from Jim in here? I don't think I have that. Okay, thank you. That's okay. So, received a communication from Jim Rupert. There was some discussion at the last PZC meeting. There's been discussion before about our building fees and how they're not, they're really low, which is nice for residents, but the point of them was to offset some of the salary for that building official, and now we have a software going in. So we've never increased our fees as our usage has gone up. Salaries go up every year. Those things are constantly shifting, yet we haven't made a change there in town. So I received a proposal from our current building official, Jim Rupert. I don't know if you all have had a time to do that. I'll let Jim speak to his suggestion and proposal, and you also see documentation on surrounding towns and what their building fees are, and you can see what he's asking for and how they coincide. Jim?
So, you know, as we're implementing the electronic permitting system, it seems like an appropriate time to reevaluate our permitting fees, because those will go into our electronic software as a formula and will be calculated when applicants apply for permits. So we thought that, you know, gee, this is timely to take a look at this. And, you know, thank you to Randy Belair for looking at and gathering the data for us for surrounding towns. I was familiar with some towns, but he actually went out and collected the data for the towns that are immediately adjacent to the town of Willington. And we also thought that, you know, some of our building permit fees are kind of complex to calculate. For new homes, it's based on square footage. For finished portions of the structure, unfinished basements, garage additions and decks, it gets kind of crazy. And to put that calculation into a formula, into the permitting system, would be difficult if not impossible. So we looked at it from the perspective of, okay, well, how can we potentially propose to go up a little bit in our fees without really being a tremendous burden to the taxpayers? And then, you know, but get a little closer to what, you know, the norm is today. And so what we proposed is many of our permits already have a $35 minimum, right? And if you think about it, any permit that we process certainly comes at a cost of more than $35 to the town. When you look at, you know, whether it's a zoning permit, building permit, between, you know, the time of our clerks or secretaries to collect the information, collect the checks, you know, the building official and other agents to review the application, communicate if we're missing information, you know, it certainly adds up to more than that. So we thought, you know, the minimum $35 fee across the board for every permit was reasonable. And then I think my proposal was $12, $1,000, a portion of $1,000 for residential. And that frankly is a $2 change per thousand for our residents. And our residents are the ones that, you know, we really wanna, you know, they're the ones that do all the small permits. And you know, a small permit can take as much time as a big permit. You know, you take a commercial building, you know, that maybe is just a box. You know, it doesn't, although it takes more time in plan review, doesn't necessarily take as much time in inspections as a single family house. So we looked at it from that perspective. We thought that was a reasonable proposal for the residential permits. And, you know, I know that Randy felt pretty strongly that, you know, we should have a different fee for, you know, for commercial. So we also proposed the $35 minimum and a slightly higher incremental per thousand cost for those commercial projects.
It's 14,
Yeah, that was
$14 instead of the 10. There's also a 26-cent per thousand educational fee. It's imposed by the state. Right now, we take that out of the fees that we already collect.
That's correct.
And what you'll see in the other data is most towns collect that. They add it on, so they pass it on. But right now, we're paying for that out of what we're already collecting. So again, I will mention there was some discussion about this at the PCC meeting, which is where this came from, and they seem to be in agreement that we
Yeah,
need.
they felt it
They
was
felt that there were
time.
some changes, and Randy was the one who agreed to do the footwork. And the reason, so it's been discussed before, this isn't the first time I've heard it bandied about, and probably not the first time you've heard this before.
I'm part of the reason why it
So-
is where it is now.
Right, but once again, something that's been asked to be looked at, and with the implementation of the new software, if we're thinking about increasing and are gonna potentially do that, now is the time to do that as we build that program. I will say I did receive an email from a member of the, Rick Maloney, a member of the EDC, and he is not in favor of it. Although, and I haven't responded to his email, it came late this afternoon. I'm not sure that Rick understands that this is not, whether we do new fees or use the same fees, that right now is not holding up the process.
It's not.
With
correct.
that software, there's lots of things to do. This is one of them, is put those new fees in. So the sooner we can do it, the easier the process can go, but right now it's not changing the drop dead start date for
One
them.
thing I neglected to mention in my brief to you is that, you know, we're gonna have ongoing licensing fees for this online software that we're gonna be using, and we're gonna be using it for other things aside from just building permits. We're gonna be tracking zoning permits, all of our planning and zoning activities, and
Wetlands as well,
wetlands,
correct?
and the recreation department is gonna use some of it for some of their sign-ups. I mean, that's something that's happening as we speak, because we're paying the minimum for $1,000, or 1,000 records per year. So we're gonna try to maximize our use of the system, but the ongoing licensing fees are gonna be around $8,000 a year. So it only makes sense to begin to think about how we're gonna cover those additional costs.
So, with that said, I thought we should take a look at it. I didn't know if you all would have had a time to look at it before tonight's meeting, or if this would be the first time you're taking a look at it. So my thought was that I expected no action to be moved on this tonight. It would take some discussion, and probably some.
Are we the
Bob,
voting
We
body
are,
for that?
we are the voting body for that. You would think this would come under, that, something in the land use department, but it does not. It is the Board of Selectmen that sets the building fees. Go figure.
I think it should be, I think it should be, because who sets fees, you know?
Right.
If you're setting your own fees, I would love to have a business selling nameplates and have the state, or have the town dictate to everybody in the town that you must go to John Blessington and buy a nameplate from him. And then, especially if you let me set the fee for what I was charging for those nameplates, I would be living quite comfortably. And that's about where we go here. You know, I was reading about the Salem witch trials. You know, interesting thing. When the whole thing finally crashed, they kept putting people in jail and hanging them for being witches. And then one day, the girls that were naming the witches kind of overstepped their bounds and named the wife of the governor as a witch. So the governor put a stop to that. And they'd already hanged about 20 people, and they had another half dozen still in jail, and the governor said they're not guilty, rule them not guilty, and let them go. They ruled them not guilty, and they wanted to let them go, but the trouble was, these folks all owed the government money, because they had been lodged by the government in their jail, and they had run up rent for that. And were not getting, well, they were not guilty, but still, the government insisted was, you gotta pay us. And so eventually they paid, or they found someone to pay for them. I just have a problem when we require people to do something and then we charge them for it. If I had my way, I think the whole thing would be run out of general fund, would be paid for out of general fund. And that way let the taxpayer know what it is, what it's costing, rather than hit the individual. I'm not sure why, if my roof is 25-year shingles on my roof are 27 years old and things are beginning to leak, and I hire a roofer, reputable contractor to put a new roof on, and it costs $8,000, I'm not quite sure why I should pay $80 to the town for the privilege of putting a new roof on. And you can't say that I have a choice there. I really don't have a choice but to do that. We have these fees in place, and I'm not thinking that they're gonna go away, but I would rather see any further charges on it to be paid out of the general fund. And I would like to keep them where they are.
I mean, there's a lot in what you just said there that I wanna respond to. One thing being, our general fund is not in surplus. We don't have an overwhelming amount of money,
I know that.
right? So individuals are going to be paying for the services that they're utilizing one way or another. So how, it's not necessarily a question of if people are gonna be paying, it's how we're gonna have them pay. Cause
And
we
who's
can
paying?
increase town taxes, would that be more palatable to you to increase town taxes for everybody because we can't afford to run our building and zoning anymore because we don't have any money? So we have to charge somebody somewhere somehow. So people are gonna be paying for the services that they need in order for this town to exist, one way or another. So we can look at each individual request and deny them, but at some point, we need to pay for this town to exist. The issue that we're having, and I know I keep bringing this kind of stuff back up, and I did it last meeting too, the issue that we're having with, the police. We cut the funding for our own dedicated police force, cause we didn't wanna pay for it, and now we don't have the authority to,
But we did cut it, we just never added.
no, it existed, at one point, there was,
Oh, the constables?
The constables,
Yeah, but
constables.
that's 30
Okay.
years ago.
yeah, so,
Okay,
but
constables, yes.
at some point, we
Sorry.
decided, no,
Yeah.
we're not gonna pay for this, we don't
Right.
want this anymore.
What,
And we're suffering the consequences, and now we can't afford it because it was not in our budget, hasn't been there for decades apparently. So we can't just not charge people for things because we don't like charging people for things. We have to pay for the services.
Right. And the last time when these fees were set, when was the last time they were changed? And either of you speak to that?
Not since I've been here, and that's been a number of years.
Not since I've been here. 10.
just,
Do you know?
I don't know. It's
Okay.
been quite, and I know that it has come up, I believe when Christina was here,
Mhm.
and I was dead set against it, and it didn't happen, to raise them.
Right.
I don't know when the last time. I would also point out on the constable, the reason that we got rid of the constables, was because the state stepped in and said your constable, you can still have constables, but if you do, they have to go through complete training. They have to have the training of a state trooper.
Right.
And, so of course, we couldn't afford that, and if somebody got trained as a state trooper, why would they wanna be a constable in Wellington anyway? So, again, maybe the bureaucracy, the land use bureaucracy here is a little overstaffed, overregulated, not overstaffed for,
Here in Willington or here?
well, not overstaffed, but,
Definitely not overstaffed.
they have too much, and laws have become too overbearing, overweening, and of course you have to have more people if the laws are, that.
So, when you mentioned taking it out of the general fund, so then we're taking the money for these fees, again, they're going to be paid by someone. So now they're being paid by the whole as opposed to by the individual who's using the service. If I recall, during the very heated debate last fall regarding dump fees, there was a lot of talk about let's only charge the people who are using the dump. So if you go, then you pay, and not everyone. And so in this case, taking it from the general fund, everybody's paying for it, but you could have a street full of people who never come in and take a building permit out and never need to utilize that service, yet they're going to pay for it out of the general fund, which at some point is going to be within their taxes. This passes it along to the user, which it is nice that we can offer such a low service, but I think at some point it becomes a disservice to our homeowners, because if we find ourselves in a place where we suddenly have to get to where everyone else is and where we should have gone, now we're looking at a large incremental increase potentially at some point. This is a way to get there in smaller increases, and starting with this, and at the very least, collecting the educational fee by the state and passing that along as opposed to taking it out of what we're already collecting. I'm not sure that I agree with taking it out of the general fund. I don't wanna see anything go up, but, clearly want to do some research as to when the last time, when these numbers were set and when the last time they were. 1970? Well, listen, that's a number that's been bandied about, so I don't know if it's just a
Well, it
popular
might be
year. But you'll see some of our neighboring towns, our minimum is 35. Others are 45. Ashford is 30, but they pay the 12,000 and they collect the 26 cents per thousand. Stafford is a $50 minimum fee, Ellington is a $45. So, we haven't gone to increasing that basic fee, we're sticking at the 35 that we're already at, but, now we're looking at $2 on the 1,000 for residents and 14 on townhomes, multifamilies, and commercial applications. So, Randy?
Randy Belair, 170 Village Hill Road. Now, to your point about spreading it to every citizen or just the people that are actually doing the work, some history might be worth entertaining here. In the annual report last year, actually the 2017-18 is not out yet. It's about to come out from the Board of Finance. But looking back the year before that, there were 282 permits let. And that generated $46,655. That's an average of $168 per permit. I don't have the information, haven't been able to get the information to break down that 282 to see how many were residential and how many were commercial. But it's pretty clear to me, it's probably 2/3, 1/3. And the commercial side of it, the 1/3, got a heck of a deal because their projects tend to be much larger, and they were paying the same as a guy who was building a shed and paying Jim $50 for the permit. The year before is more interesting. Now we're going back to 2015-16, 330 permits were let. So that's about 65 more than the subsequent year. That generated $101,885. Why do you think that number is so much higher?
Was that the year, so FedEx had
The
done
roof on
the
FedEx.
roof on FedEx?
Yeah.
So some of those larger projects will
So
skew
they
the
probably
numbers.
represented 80,000 of that, and they paid this lovely $10 per thousand rate. Which gave them a heck of a bargain, and I would suggest they're a global multi-billion-dollar company.
That project was actually over $1 million.
Yeah, it was a gnat's eyelash to them. They wouldn't have not done the project because they had to pay an extra $2. Lastly, keep in mind that we already know we have right around 80 bad foundations in town. And we've only had 3 or 4 repaired so far, Jim?
Maybe up to 5 or 6.
Okay. We got $0 for that. And Jim will tell you, those are inspection intensive, work, construction gets done. I did mine, and not only was he there the 5 or 6 times that were required, he had to come back one time because the contractor screwed up. And some of the towns actually charge, if you're denied approval on an inspection, they'll charge you $50 for the inspector to come back and redo it. We don't do that. And I'm not suggesting we should, because it's rare.
It's pretty rare.
It's pretty rare that he has to come back, and that makes a lot of complexity we don't really need. But really all we're suggesting here is for a separate commercial rate of $2 more. It doesn't seem to me like a very onerous change to the commercial community. To Rick's point, his objection that, it might get in the way of development from an economic development promotional standpoint. I don't think so. Now when you look at towns like Mansfield and Tallinn, who charge $25 or $30 per thousand for commercial. So I think the time to entertain doing this now is right, and I would advocate approving Jim's recommendation.
Todd, you wanted to say anything?
When you pull the permit and you go through it, there's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes, and I agree with these gentlemen. I fully don't understand or know what they're talking about as far as the amount and different stuff, but surrounding towns in the norm, it prevents a blue roof. It's when you pull a permit, you've got people from the town following up to make sure things are done correctly.
Right.
And that's what it's about, ensuring that You know, somebody's not putting a tarp up on a roof instead of, you know, shingles. And I agree with them. It just makes sure, it keeps things in check. You know, you have to pay a certain amount, and unfortunately, that's the way the world is. You have to pay for what you get. You know, it costs to go along, you know, the route. But I agree with these gentlemen. The increases are due.
It's been a long time since I was with planning and zoning and all that, but didn't major commercial projects used to have clerk of the works? Do we still do that, or do we not do that anymore?
I don't know, John, this is my first year on planning and zoning as a voting member.
So John, I can tell you that, part of the approval, for the Loves project included a clerk of the works. But that does not replace the requirements for the municipality to have a building official and do inspections. Clerk of the works is really there to manage the day-to-day operations and be there in the interim. But that does not reduce the burden on the town building official to do his or her inspections for the project.
Okay, I'm not sure why, why we would have a clerk of the works. I would assume it's their job to make sure that everything is up to code. And yes, I understand the building inspector has to make sure that they did their job, but much of the work being done there, I think, is supposed to be done by the clerk of the works.
If it works well, it should make the building official's job a bit easier. But the building official is the individual who carries a license that makes sure that those things are done. Generally, your clerk of the works does not have that level of licensure.
Okay.
And not,
Yes, Randy?
not to throw a wrench in the works here, but one thing that intrigues me is if you come in to the building department here and you apply and you tell the building department, you describe what you're gonna do, you show them your plans and all of the, all the documents that they require, and they tell you the budget for this thing, the contractor says it's $100,000. We're basically relying on Jim's judgment and the other officials here to look at the scope of that project and say, that's in the ballpark. Some towns do a true-up after the project's done and look at the actual cost, because if they sandbag you, they tell you 75% of the true cost. That should have been $125,000 for permitting purposes. And that's an interesting thing when you start talking about these multi-million-dollar projects like Love's, which may or may not ever happen, but that is going to be probably a $10 million project.
We actually do that with commercial projects. It's in the building code that the building official can require an affidavit of construction costs, and we do at the end of commercial projects.
We should. I didn't see that document anywhere, but I'm glad to hear that.
Well, it's actually allowed by code, so we do, it's been a matter of our, it's part of what we do on a daily basis for commercial projects, is we reconcile at the end of the project, and really for two reasons. The lesser of the reason is to collect more fees. More importantly, there are change orders that take place during the project, and we wanna make sure that we've captured all of those change orders, so when they get a certificate of approval or certificate of occupancy, it actually encompasses the entire scope of work that was completed and not just what they originally applied for.
To take that down to the residential level, in my foundation rebuild, there were 2 or 3 change orders that amounted to like an extra $1,600 of expense that I had to pay. But because it was a foundation replacement, I was exempted from having to have the permit adjusted. It would have been $20 or $30, which I would have gladly paid. But I'm trying to bring focus to the really large projects. When you've got these $1 million projects, I think we all should rely on our folks to make sure they true that up when the project is complete, to be sure we get full value for the services they're providing and have to provide, in order to issue a CO at the end of the project.
would suggest, I'm not ready to make any kind of motion or, action tonight. I don't know how everyone else feels about it. If you'd like to do some more research, I'd like to, I want to specifically date on when the last time our fees were altered. And again, I don't know how much time you all had to look at the documentation, so I want us to be able to really look at it, digest it, give it some thought. And so we will discuss it again at our next meeting. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, I'd say feel free to ask, our current building official. And, this is based on his recommendation. And again, the board, the Planning and Zoning Commission was in favor of looking at that, and Randy had the task of
Can I
doing the
make one final
research.
suggestion?
Yes, you may.
Since the data's not out yet, but Jim has it because he had to contribute to the annual report. If you were to get the numbers, how many permits were for residential versus commercial in June or July of 2017 through June of 2018? And look at how much money was paid in each one of those categories, and then plus it up, had the fee been 12 and 14, that will tell you how much revenue we're talking about additionally to the town to offset the cost of the systems and the personnel. I would caution that the Crumbling Concrete, captive insurance company, next month is probably going to go live and start distributing funds to people. And we're going to have a lot of shovels in the ground, depending on what how many contractors can be resourced to do all this work. We've already got about 80 houses that need the work. We're going to lose money on every single one of those inspections that Jim has to go on because we waived the fees for all
Right.
that work.
And that's one way to look at it. Another opinion, and at least one shared by Rick, was, in light of those things, are we then passing that cost along to people who are already having issues with their much needed repairs? So now we're increasing the pain to them. So that I hear what you're saying, but
But they don't pay anything for permits, so the way we're increasing the pain is whatever taxes they pay,
Some percent of that is going to fund the building department's budget.
right, but so now they're going to be coming here to get a permit for the work for the repairs that they're doing. And now
it won't be the
there'll be an
homeowner,
increase.
it'll be all administered through the
Potentially,
operating
not everyone
budget.
is gonna go through that, not every one of those
Well,
homeowners is
that's
gonna
true.
get money from that,
They
so
might qualify,
that's
yeah.
right, that's another way to look
Yes.
at it.
So these fees that are being waived eventually will be paid out of the general fund,
Yes,
basically, okay.
Yep.
Which,
well, it's gonna get paid somehow, cause you gotta fund.
well,
the
yeah,
budget.
that's just the point I'm trying to make, this is what I'm saying.
But what you're missing is, it's a very small number of people, 282 permits was probably,
It wasn't 282 families or individuals who let those permits.
And
There are
those
people
permits
with
are
multiple-
wide ranging, they're not all repairs of homes, it could be a deck, it could be a shed, it could be.
Could be
a
replaced your
pool.
furnace, a pool,
Right.
yeah, it could
So
be a lot of different
There's
things.
a wide variety
Yeah.
of items there. So, unless you have any other objections.
Oh, I agree, we're not ready, anywhere
No.
near ready to vote on this yet, so.
Are you ready to vote on it?
Probably, but that doesn't mean we should.
That's right. Okay, so we will further discuss this at our next meeting. So the
Thank you.
next item, Jim, thank you very much.
You are very
Appreciate it.
welcome.
Randy, thank you for the
Yep.
work. So the next item is the Planning and Zoning Wetlands Agent. I was hoping to come to you today and say that we were ready and we were ready to fill that position. As you know, we've had that position empty since August the 10th, or August the 11th, she was here on the 10th. We've gone through 2 searches now, which have resulted in 5. 5 applicants with varying experience. We've not had one applicant who meets all of our qualifications that we've laid out, not one.
We did have one, I believe,
I don't think she did,
the first
the one
time.
the first time, and she still didn't have all of them. We made an offer and she turned us down, she was missing the
Okay.
wetland, I believe it was the wetlands.
Yeah. She was-
Right, so she was the most qualified, but we still haven't had anyone who's met all of our qualifications. So what we were approached with in this last round, and I don't know how much I shared with you before, we had 22 applications. I'm sorry, by the end we had 23 because we had one like a couple days before we did our interviews. So we started with 22, 23 was what it ended with. One of those was a duplicate, so God bless the internet, you can apply twice. We also had CME associates out of the offices and stores came to us with a proposal for offering the services on a contracted basis. So we interviewed, we still did not have a fully qualified candidate. Then we got a proposal for CME. The hiring committee all agreed that this was the route we thought was going to be best. It was the most cost effective for the town. They're qualified in every aspect. It was gonna cost us less. Our salary range is certainly a hindrance. We're looking at the salary range in and around the $80,000. No, for the going rate, in and around the $80,000 range. Ours is a union position, starting at 53 and change. So you can see the discrepancy. We put this on many professional sites. We did not get one application from any of the professional sites in 2 searches. So to say it's discouraging was an understatement. This is something that everyone had been happy with. They are fully certified. They can offer us many other services above and beyond. Because it is a union position, we have to work with the union because it's union work. There is a clause in the union contract that I believe can allow us to contract out. I am now in the mix of working with the union rep on that, so we are not anywhere tonight. I was hoping we would be able to move forward tonight, and I know planning and zoning was as well, so that we can, get things moving and get them set where they were. I think our goal all along, and everyone would agree, especially you were in the first round of hiring and everyone in the second round, our intention was to put an individual in that position, and it just hasn't worked out for us. This would allow us an individual here in the town. It wouldn't be 5 days a week, but they'd be available to people. So if someone emailed them, they're still responding. They're just not present here. They would attend meetings. They would do reports. They would do all the work of that, but in fewer days for us.
Can you tell me what CME Associates Inc. is?
I can share with you. Yes. Put on my. This is a little about what CME is. This was the actual proposal, which I'm not sure I'm ready to share the actual proposal, but I can share with you the, this is a little bit of the planner. Basically, we'd be getting, a town planner service at much less of a cost.
Around what less of a cost are we talking about?
Well, so it'd be contract service, so there would be no benefits. So we're averaging between 16 and 21,000, depending on if it's an individual or a family for benefits. So that right off the top would be a cost savings. And then we'd be saving around $6,000, just under $6,000 in salary savings for this current year. That would change, and the math would change from there. So this would allow us to enter into a 1-year agreement, which then we could extend if mutually agreed upon, or there are ways to, with notice, a 60-day notice, either one of us could back up. It would be paid on a monthly basis. We would have a dedicated person here, and he would have someone above him. That person is one of the key things. Concerns was that we weren't finding anyone who was qualified with any wetlands experience. And they have this, the individual who would be our guy, he's fully trained, as Susan was. And he's the Casio training, and all of the qualifications that we're gonna take a look at this. So this is where we're hoping to go in the recommendation. Planning and zoning was hoping to be able to talk tomorrow about it, and the people on the committee, and I believe I mentioned, but I'll mention again, myself, a member of EDC, the chair of planning and zoning, and our building official and acting ZEO, Jim Rupert, and the co-chairs of Inland Wetlands Commission. So those key components are the people who made up the hiring committee, and we were all in agreement. So now I'm just waiting, so I want to keep you informed. Do you have some thoughts?
Just a question, if I understand this, we're going to basically be hiring a consultant
Yes.
and, to take Susan's place, that would be for a year.
The contract is, right now, the way the terms are set out, it's a year, and then you can extend mutually agreed upon.
And if, we were unhappy at the end of that year, we could,
Yes,
uh,
there is ways of notice to get out on both parties,
okay.
yes. So it doesn't necessarily mean this would be what we do for forever, but it gives us an opportunity to have some very professional services in that department where we know we put ourselves at high risk for litigation in that department. And we all know that it's important to have someone in there. We have a temporary agreement with Bolton to contract gym services until December 1st. It's a lot of extra work on Jim, and because he does that full time in Bolton as well as being our building official, so it is a lot of work, and he's doing a fantastic job at it. Emily has really come a long way in there. You know, she's working on her training. There could be potential for someone to move into that spot down the road. There's always potential for different things to happen. It really depends on who's here at the time and what that looks like. But this doesn't have to be a permanent solution. And they also bring with them grant writing experience, which could be huge. They can find us some grants for some things we weren't looking at. They're also would like to take our POCD and take some of the really key components that we need to move forward with and start helping us move in that forward direction with those, and actually take that document and put it into action. And that is a bonus service that I don't think we'd be able to get out of someone who is still working on bringing themselves up to speed. While they're not familiar with our regulations, they are familiar with the process and the job as a whole, because they both done these jobs. So we would be able to get someone who would hit the ground mostly running, jogging, shall we say, and then just finding their way around WIllington's regulations, which for anyone would be a learning curve. So there are lots of positives to it, and again, a savings to the town is a plus. I did not think it would be possible for them to offer us what we had talked about in our ballpark at all. I anticipated it being much more. So, and the bonus is they are in stores if we need them. It's not their day to be here. When we call, they can be here in 10 minutes. They would set up times with residents who couldn't come in the time that they were doing office hours, and they're willing to set things up individually. So there's a lot of room to move there. So, but the union is a hurdle, and we knew that going in.
Now,
So,
we can,
right. So, I'm willing to work with them, and
we would have one individual
Correct.
that's dedicated.
correct.
So,
Then he would be our guy here, and then
although
then
he's
someone would
also
oversee
part
him.
of part of that company.
Yes. So he works for them.
He works for them.
He works for them, and we
We
contract their
contract.
service, similar to Jim. Jim doesn't, we contract Jim's service for the town of Bolton. So this would be contracting from
And he
a
would
firm
likely-
instead
and
of,
this person would likely be contracted also to other towns, so we would be sharing,
it's possible.
yeah.
So at this point, I don't believe he is, John, who is the lead, he does work in a couple of other towns, and we talked about what it looks like for him there, and we checked in on those things. He is consulting planner,
Oh, excuse me.
I think currently he's in Haddam. He's worked in Woodstock, town of Thompson, Clinton is where he's working. So some towns only need him. I think it's Hampton. I believe it's Hampton he's in. He's there one day a week. The town hall was only open a handful of days a week, not 5. And so he can do all the work in one day, but they avail themselves at other times. So again, finding a highly qualified applicant is the key, as opposed to us settling for someone who, you know, meets the bare minimum to get by with the job, I don't think is the best for the town. So, and we saw where that took us, the last go around. So I will keep you up to date. I'm hoping that the next time we meet, we will have better, more concrete news. And they can really just get moving in a forward direction. Meanwhile, Jim is really holding down the fort in there, and Emily's doing a great job, and Peggy.
I think this sounds like the way to go right now.
Yeah, it really,
Get us through another year and then
we can reevaluate it then and see what that looks like. So, it's incredibly professional services, for, in my opinion, a while. So it would be a change for residents, not to have somebody here 5 days a week, but I think, like anything else, we'd get used to it, and they may see that they don't necessarily need it all the time, and they would be able to contact, so
And if it really is not working out,
there's an out clause.
there's no.
Yes.
Whereas if you hire somebody that's terrible, there's much less likelihood that you're gonna have an easy out.
A little
Yeah.
harder to get out of, that is
Yeah.
correct. Okay, so I'll keep you up to date. So with that, I'll move on to some tax refunds, we'll see what we got here. I move to issue a certificate of correction to Daniel or Karen Donaghy in the amount of $63.79. Seconded by John. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. I move to refund Merrick Stopa on a certificate of correction in the amount of $121.69.
Second.
Seconded by Liza. Any discussion?
Mhm.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And I move to refund John or Susan Davies a certificate of correction in the amount of $27.24.
Second?
Seconded by John. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. All right, that brings us to old business, of which we have none this evening. And on to good and welfare. I want to thank the garden club for moving the plants in the front. They did a really beautiful job all summer of taking care of some beautiful plantings, putting in lots of new things. We didn't want them to be destroyed with the construction that's going on, so they have moved them. Some were moved to the back. Some people have taken them home to care for them. Those who don't have a brown thumb like myself are taking care of the plants so they won't get trampled on and destroyed. So thank you to the garden club for their help putting them in and moving them. And they'll come back and put things in probably after the winter, is my guess at this point. So I received an email on Friday. I know I mentioned to you all once before that I had been contacted by the real estate agent for the church property. So my last communication with him was back in June. And I got an email saying he was approaching the diocese in a couple of weeks on a reduction. If he could get an agreement with them, would the town or the fire department have interest in the entire property for $475,000? Let him know if we have any interest. Just
Sure. We're interested.
passing it on. We're interested. We scrape up a
Money.
couple pennies and, listen,
About
I could
three,
think of
maybe.
uses for the town with that piece of property. It'd make a nice human services and rec center area. And everything could be in one place. It would be very nice,
Can
but
I ask a question about
yes.
that? Do we also get clarification about the selling them in two separate parcels?
Well, so
with
it's funny,
that?
that's my last communication with him
They
was,
didn't address that?
he'd never address, his response to that was, I will discuss it. Thank you, I'll share that with the diocese, that you should know that.
Yeah.
And that issue was that, and for those who weren't here, they were marketing the church and the rectory as two separate parcels, one commercial, one residential. It is currently one parcel that's zoned residential.
And
So while they're
never-
marketing two
yeah.
different, he never responded back, and I didn't look into it, cause, I mean, any buyer who's looking to purchase is gonna realize they can't only purchase the church because,
They have to do both.
right, and if they had two
One
buyers at the
property.
same time, they were gonna find themselves in a pickle because it's one piece of property here with the town. Some would have to pay to go through the process of dividing it. So I don't know where they are with that. The other item is a letter we received on the 21st of September, and I'll read this into the record. Dear First Selectman Waschinsky, I'm writing to express my appreciation for recent work that was done by the Town of Willington Public Works Department. I've lived in this town for the past 14 years after building our home on Tinkerville Road. During that time, I worked hard to restore the stone wall that ran along the front of my property and reestablish a lawn along the roadway. Over time, the poor drainage along the roadway has continually caused erosion of the lawn area and breakdown of the asphalt on the edge of the road. I'd approached the former Public Works Director years ago to see if it was possible to install curbing and told that it wasn't feasible due to budget restrictions. Since that time, I've done my best to maintain my property and manage the erosion. Last year, I approached the Public Works crew who were doing roadside work and made them aware of the deterioration and breakdown of the edge of the road asphalt in front of my property. The follow-up response was great, and the crews came and installed some reclaimed asphalt as a temporary fix. Recently, all of Tinkerville was repaved and it looks great. Last week, much to my surprise, I came home from work to see that curbing had been installed. I was not only pleased to see that my long outstanding issue was addressed, but that the Public Works staff understood the need to protect taxpayers' investment of the new roadway for the future. In closing, I want to express my appreciation and commend the staff at Public Works for their efforts. This was a time where our crew was without Derek because he was out on a leave. This is just one example. Unfortunately, the others I had were not in writing, of people calling to commend them on what great work they did this summer and for different projects. So I wanted to share that with you all. They really do a good job, and sometimes their work doesn't go unnoticed until something doesn't get done. So it was nice to share that. Want to also mention the car show, annual car show on the Green is this Saturday, October 6th from 10 to 3. The rain date is Sunday the 7th. This is helping to support the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation. So that's where the money goes to. If anyone's interested in a car, it's $10 show car entrance fee. Dash plaques for the first 125 show cars. I don't know if that still exists. There is information on the website. So if you have a car and want to enter it,
Do you think they're interested in my minivan?
I think they might be. If not, you
2017
can go and
Pacifica?
support and check it out. So, and the last item I have for good and welfare, I want to extend my condolences on behalf of the town on the passing of Lena Beebe, our former first selectman, Christina Milos' mother, passed last week. So I want to send our condolences to Christina and Eric and their families in her passing. With that, I'll move to adjourn.
Excuse me,
Town
Eric.
Meeting.
Oh, yes, we have a town meeting tomorrow at 7 PM at the Old Town Hall for the items we're appropriating funds for the ramp and the support pillars under the assessor's wing.
Leslie, gonna be there?
I'm gonna try. I have 3 children that might have to be
I
brought with
love
me.
running around.
Can they vote? No, they're not 18.
No, they're not 18. They can't, is it John? Is that his first name?
Jay.
Jay. That was close. From the construction company will be there to answer questions.
I may not, try to be there, but I may have something else to do, so.
I will be there. I may have something else to do, but I will not be doing anything else. I will be there.
I will. So I hope to be there.
Robin will be there too, despite.
We have, tomorrow night here, 7:30 is the planning and zoning meeting.
It is. It is very possible that anyone who wanted to come to planning and zoning could leave the town meeting and still make it over here. So, planning and zoning, it's at the Old Town Hall. Planning and zoning meeting is here at 7:30. We are at 7 PM. Okay. With that, I will motion to adjourn.
Excuse me, Eric, I have a question for you. And I apologize, it's a little bit out of line. It's, we talked about, by the TA stop where the trucks are backing in or pulling in and jamming up the traffic as a safety hazard. Is there anything with the state police or the town or the state of Connecticut? Is there any concerns with that where it's putting the Wellington residents at risk? I've got videos and recordings of last week with heavy rain, with 3 trucks deep and cars trying to get into there and trying to go around, which is very dangerous.
Well, I don't have any information on that tonight, so I'm gonna have a look at it.
I, or can if you don't mind. A couple of years ago, Christina Milos had, requested OSTA to do a study because they were looking at traffic calming measures and stuff, and the state came out and they did a study of exactly that area, and they said that it's fine the way it is.
But still,
Right.
that is another one of those questions that we have on the lists for the
Mhm.
state police when they come.
It came up last week, so.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, because I've got pictures of it, I was getting off the highway, it was raining, people are trying to go up into the opposite way with cars coming the other way, and I can show you on my phone, pictures, there's 3 trucks
Yeah.
deep with cars in front of me.
we believe you.
Yeah.
All right,
The challenge is the locus of control for that issue.
Well-
Who has control for that issue?
I'll wait, I just don't wanna see a family get killed, that's all.
No, you're
and I don't think anyone here does.
not alone in that.
Okay.
All right, with that, I move to adjourn at 7:41.
Second?
Have a good night, all.
Aye.